Welcome back to the War Room. Svihlik and Shooter back at it. As you can see, DJ, I'm all set for Miami. I got Miami's shirt on. The All-American game is coming. We've released our 2025 rankings. Nothing but prospects here through the middle of September. Welcome back, DJ. How you doing? Oh, look at that cup. Where's that cup from?
I'm more concerned about the butterflies on your shirt. What are those butterflies?
Yeah,
I gotta get that. Are they moths or are they butterflies?
I don't know the exact phylum or I'm going back to my science days. But yes, I am all set for the 305 South Beach. Here we go.
Yeah, that's going to be good. I'm excited about it. I think that you guys came up with this last year, and this whole 26 versus 25 thing, guys love it. People out in the industry absolutely love it. It's a unique look. It's a unique game. It makes it somewhat competitive. You know, the young guys want to beat the old guys. Mm-hmm. The old guys don't want to look, we're calling them old, they're 17. The old guys don't want to look bad. And last year, what happened? The young guys won. And what did we say? You know, it's interesting we say that because we talked the other day when we were talking about some of those middle infielders. This class looks more exciting. Don't know what the outcomes are going to be. These are more interesting prep players to scout than last year's group. This is not an indictment on last year's group being bad. Okay. I don't want to say that, but there's just a lot of exciting players in this year's class. And sure enough, 25 came to Milwaukee last year and beat 23. No, did I get that right? Yeah. 25 beat 24. 25
beat 24, even though there were a lot of millions of dollars made with those 24, still more to be made out of college. But I will say we're going to dive in these 25s. We did the shortstops the other day, hitting the premium position to start. Yeah. I want to knock out all the other positional players. And I'd be remiss because I think you and I were talking before we got on here about some of the importance of how these guys raise their level of prospect status. We talked about a lot of lanes and tiers, getting guys in the right lanes and tiers early on, so we're not making huge adjustments later. We're going to talk about kind of the corner outfielders, corner infielders. We'll go up the middle to kind of those guys who can stick in the middle of the field, center field, catcher. But these are not the shortstops, right? It's not the sexy 2019 class or 2023, 21 who we were talking about the other day. These are more, hey, we got to get the nitty gritty on some of these guys. They might be right corner. This might be different. But talk to me a little bit about the scouting of these type guys. Once you move off of shortstop, right? Get away from the shortstops. How are you evaluating these guys throughout the summer? Let's start more so with the corner profile guys, whether it's a corner outfielder or kind of the corner infield position. How is the evaluation of that going on throughout the summer?
Well, I think part of the evaluation is you got this tool part, you got the skill part, the tool part, the performance part. I guess skill and performance kind of go hand in hand. If you're a skilled player, you probably perform, generally speaking. I think that's a fair statement. So if you have these two areas, this tool area and this skill area, and we're dealing with corner profile players where it's going to have to be the bat. We know that for all players, it's probably going to be the bat that's going to carry them. But these players have less to fall back on, which is that goes without saying. So the question is how much weight do you want to put on the strength part of their game? The size of the size of the player, the strength of the player, the projection of the body, and what the physical output is right now. And it can be measured by exit velocity. Just visually, it can be measured by what you're seeing that guy doing batting practice. Does he have the strength, the sheer strength, where you look at him and you say, I can see this guy being a corner profile player, which is going to come attached to strength. And then the next part of it becomes the skill part. And when they start to layer the skill on, then you start to get really, really excited because now you're getting a strong player with the skill. You and I talked about the Matt Olsons of the world. We talked about the Austin Rileys of the world. These are players that were, I hate saying that they're second tier because of where they went in the draft. It's just the industry wants to take Jacob Lombard. They want to take George Lombard. They want to take, we took Khalil Watson. You want to take Jordan Lawler. They tend to want to shop in the middle of the field, but immediately thereafter becomes this bat guy. And somebody, make no mistake, don't get this confused with comfort. You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable in that part of the draft. That's why Austin Riley is hanging out down there. That's why Nolan Arenado is hanging out down there, and Giancarlo Stanton. And who did I just say? It was Giancarlo Stanton. It was Austin. Oh, Matt Olson. And you put a little more pressure on you, but if they show up, to your point on scouting, with strength and layered with some skill, you should be really excited to pull that off the board, because therein lies a clear pathway to a Group 6 player, which is what we're all trying to get.
You know what I love about what you just said? Bat guy. These are bat guys. And that's something that I was really adamant when we were putting together this list and kind of breaking away from a lot of what the industry does, right? There's a shortstop, outfielder, catcher, pitcher. It's just everything gets jumbled together. These guys we're going to talk about, hey, they're not shortstops, but if we put them into the shortstop category, hey, their defense may get dinged, right? They're not dancing around out there like an Ethan Holiday, whoever it may be, the Eli Willits, Billy Carlson. Hey, they're not on that level, but these are a different level of bats. So let me just drop down some of the guys. So Xavier Nyans, who were played a lot of shortstop this summer, more of a third baseman, corner profile when we're looking at it. Quentin Young, who I think has a chance to be a plus defender at third. We bring in a guy like Gavin Fiend, Caleb Barnett, Josh Hammond, even who's a two-way talent. Yeah. We'll dive into a lot of those guys. But at the top, so the Nyans, Quentin Young discussion. Huge upsides. They're top 10 guys for us. What did you see from them? Because I know there's a ton of swing and miss this summer, but the upside, you talked about the performance. We're going to continue to harp on reporting versus scouting. Talk about those two guys first, about what you saw.
You made a comment a second ago that I want to touch on really quick, and we addressed this the other day. The whole tiering system here, and I think this is it's open for debate. I don't think there's a right answer. It's more of a stylistic thing and how it's going to allow you to manage your roadmap and what types of players you're going to get anchored into. But when you look at one of these players, you bring up Nyans is a good example. Quentin Young's a good example. We'll get to them in like 2 seconds. But the lane that you put them in, and we touched on this the other day, is really important for the high school hitter based on what you saw in the summer. If you go a little bit more conservative and you put them in lane number 2, what you're then doing is setting them up for success. You're setting them up for what we're going to touch on in a second here of what do they have to do to elevate their game. If you come to me and you make the decision that they're lane number 1 right now, what happens next year when they're swinging and missing? Or what happens when they don't make the adjustment and you try to backpedal as a scout? Now we have a hard time going, well, you liked him in the summer. Now you don't think he can improve. So generally speaking, I think the ability to make a case for this player, the ability to understand what the player needs to get better, and then as soon as he shows it to you, a la Gavin Lux is a great example, then you elevate the player next year and you say, I like him now here because he did this. So I think that's really, really important. To your point on Xavier Nyans versus Quentin Young, I have a lot more comfort with the whole evaluation of Nyans because I saw him a lot more. I had the opportunity to watch him a bunch at area codes. I had the opportunity to watch him at the Major League Baseball All-American game in San Diego. Nyans is loaded with talent. Loaded with talent. I mean, you're talking about a player that is athletic. He's got strength right now with a body that's going to just keep getting better. He loves to play the game. By all accounts, it's a wonderful makeup player. And he can really, really throw, and he can defend. Probably send him out at shortstop for a little bit. And then maybe he moves over to third base as his body continues to grow. But here you're looking at a true left-handed power profile player that, to our point on improvement, he's going to have to make some adjustments with the bat. He's going to have to shorten up his load a little bit. He's got a little arm bar working. I think that gets him in trouble some. But when he gets on time and his barrel gets to the ball, the contact is really exciting. It's really loud, and it just screams middle of the order left-handed power bat. But he's going to have to make some adjustments going forward.
It's interesting that the track record, so even going back, because this summer the swing and miss were there. For those clubs that had their underclass, and we obviously have this long track record with him. He's been very famous for a while now, especially by me up in the Pacific Northwest. He did perform at area codes as an underclassman. He's on the Royals. Like, that was the singular best prospect that they had. As a junior in high school, he was the best guy in the field in the 3-hole. He gets hits there. Does that help him to this year where, hey, there was some swing and miss? Oh, yeah, but last year he hit. Maybe we just saw him in the wrong week.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And there's no doubt in my mind, I can clearly see as soon as he runs onto the field, as soon as he stands in the batter's box, there's game presence to this player. There's field presence to this player. It's very clear who the guy is when he runs out of the dugout. Great point on last year. And I think that's why we scout these players a lot. It begs the question, who is he? Who does he think he is? The people around him, what type of messaging are they giving him? Is he a hitter or is he a power guy? For somebody that has seen him over multiple years, has he changed? These are all the kind of things that we talked about last year that you want to dive into. You can't just lean into the fact that he swung and missed and he punched out. I don't know. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter here because we know that the performance for these summer players is just a small piece of it. So I don't even know how many times he struck out at area codes, but I'm not too concerned about it. What I'm concerned about is who was he? Who does he want to be? And what is he going to do going forward to clean this up? Because if he does, you've got an elite left-handed power bat.
You know what I like most about him, and beyond, again, the reporting of it, the aggressiveness, right? He was not timid when he stepped into the play. He got off great hacks. I will say I've been adamant about this, and very rarely am I so. I think last year I did the same thing with Boston Bateman, where the umpire was just brutal in certain spots. Because right now, with data departments, you're gluing in this guy's this percent strike percentage. He's going to throw a lot of balls versus this guy, the swing and miss and the strikeout, the K percentage. Xavier Nines got downright screwed multiple times in my looks on strikeouts. So it's like something that I put in my note because, hey, this is going to skew data departments if they're not looking into it.
Reporting versus scouting. How do you scout Xavier Nines? Can he make adjustments? Is there a high level? Is there a care level? Is there a compete level? I don't know. I've never talked to the kid. Here's what I do know. When he was struggling at area codes, he knows he's the guy. We talked about having a target on your back. He's very self-aware. He knows who he is. Ethan Holiday knows who he is. Everybody knows who those players are. And when Xavier Nines is struggling at the plate at area codes, which he was, I'm going to say it was day 3. He made a conscious decision in the dugout. He didn't want to look bad anymore. He came up. The adjustment he made was he throws me a first pitch fastball. I'm going to be ready. I'm going to be on it. He did that 2 times in a row, and it was super loud contact. Now, did he hijack a fastball? Sure. But he gave you a little glimpse into what he was all about and what was important to him. He wasn't comfortable. He was struggling. Then he comes up for 2 at-bats, and he whistles squares up 2 balls to the outfield. I'm sure the exit velocities, I don't have it in front of me, were really, really loud. It just gives you this glimmer of hope that this player has a level of self-awareness that he's going to be willing to make those adjustments going forward.
So along the same lines, and very similarly, Quentin Young, who's a reclass, he was a 2026, is up class. I think he's more like 18-2, 18-3 at draft. So not crazy young for the class like an Eli Willits, but definitely younger. He had some swing and miss. To me, there were adjustments. They were not simple adjustments, but I looked at it even as a pitcher like, hey, there's something off there. There's a hole that's being exploited because of a small thing. And I always think of like the Grand Canyon effect, right? You're on the road all summer. There's a little drip. You start leaking here, and then it continues to go. You're away from home. You haven't had the chance to get in the cage with your guy. That's what it looked like to me for him. What he continued to do was defend at an unreal clip. For a kid that big and impressive, he danced around like a ballerina out there, and it's a plus arm. And he is one, I think even more than Nines, I'd feel comfortable sending him out at shortstop because of how good his hands are.
He made an outstanding play. Your first thing is how can you be 6'5" and have that kind of athleticism? How can you be 6'5"? There's not that many 6'5". We go right down that road of cynicism.
Yep.
Can't be that big and play that position, right? Made a wonderful play. Just good dynamic flexibility, the ability to reach down at full speed,
I like that.
throw it on the run. He was just able to do that at the MLB All-American game, which was really, really good. And I think, from an offensive standpoint, whether it's Nines or whether it's Q Young, you look at these 2 players, and when there is swing and miss, and there's other players in there, you have to ask yourself why. That's where I think that's where you can beat another team. That's where you can have a better understanding of the player. And are they chasing balls all over the place, or do they have a simple load situation, a loading mechanism that they need to clean up? Do they have a little bit of a swing adjustment that they need to make? Because if it's not a visual acuity problem and they show the ability to repeat the swing in BP, and they can show you little bits and pieces of it in the game, then maybe it's just a small part of their offensive game that you can help fix. And there is development to be had if the player is self-aware enough and the people around him are willing to recognize it and help him. So easier said than done sometimes.
The moving on with some of these guys, and I got to say, we call it this corner profile. I would almost call this the asterisk athlete group. It's the bat, right? The bat works for these guys. And on this group, there's 15 guys in this category that we put out on prepbaseball.com. Go check it out with the draft board coming this fall. A guy like Gavin Feen, Caleb Barnett, Josh Hammond, Boston Kellner, Sean Gamble, to an extent where Sean Gamble was a tough guy to place just because he's done some center field, like second base, third base. He's kind of moving all around. I've always seen some Chase Utley in him at second, but just the way he like moves on the field a little bit. But going back to the top, so Gavin Feen, in contrast to Nyans and Quentin Young, Gavin Feen just keeps hitting. And the difficulty with him is, hey, it's a right profile. Where's he going to play? He's been at shortstop. He's played a lot of first base for Team USA. He's gone to the outfield. It's a plus arm out there. And with that profile, it's just like, hey, he's going to have to perform. Which, let me ask you, like, why does that guy have to keep performing? At what point do you say, hey, no, he can just hit?
Or you can say kind of to your point. Has he just performed enough?
Yeah.
I find him interesting. He's one of the guys that there was a sprinkling of players that I didn't get a chance to either A, see at all, or B, got just a little snapshot of, whether it's, we talked about Case and Cunningham, snapshot of him, snapshot of Willits. I got a snapshot of Feen. We're going to talk about some catchers, a snapshot, but there's very few of those players where I'd say, I just got a snapshot. In that snapshot, this was interesting. And sometimes that word gets overused. I'm watching him, and we talked before about, you got Ethan Holiday, you got Case and Cunningham, and you got Q Young. So this guy just kind of gets relegated to first base, and you start to wonder, well, you don't get a round of infield. What can he do? To hear you say it is a plus arm. I saw a really good, all this guy does is hit in the game. Even at the All-American game, when given the opportunity to hit, he squares the ball up. And make no mistake, Team USA, for what, I'm not saying that they take all the best players, and I'm not saying that the players that Team USA takes are ultimately going to fulfill the better outcome of players that aren't on Team USA. We know that. But when they make Team USA with a skill set and they go out and they just continue to hit, man, that should give you some comfort and confidence in the bat. And then you kind of drip in there Southern California, you drip in there he's always hit. He's probably done enough at this point. Now it just becomes what are the secondary tools going to be? Where's the landing spot on the field? And if you can get comfortable with the dirt, which I should have articulated this when we're comparing bat guy outfielders to bat guy infielders. It is always more comfortable to take the dirt guy. The outcomes tend to be a little more consistent, a little better, generally speaking. Austin Riley, right? Nolan Arenado, right? Maybe it was a body issue. Maybe I didn't really like the body. I didn't really like the athleticism. Man, this guy can really, really hit. Yes, there is James Wood out there who fulfills that. But the Matt Olsons, the Tristan Casas went a little later in the draft, the Austin Rileys, the Gavin Feens, these guys become really interesting when they just hit a ton leading into their – and that's why the summer is so important for guys like this. So
you know what's
probably done enough.
And maybe this is the Southern California-ness of him, the professional, great bloodlines. Brother got drafted this year. At USA, it's easy late in games, right? The day, game 2, there's been a workout all day to give away at bats, right? Yeah. Hey, I'm ready to go to lunch. I'm ready to go home. This dude was ready to step on necks. He collected his hits. He got his, which when you get the pro ball, you need to be able to do that, right? You need to be able to go out in the Southern League, and it's been hot, and it's all July. I need to get 2 hits today. It's not just the 1 for 4. Going 2 for 4 will allow me to do something like that. But anyway, I find it to be
shooter. That's my speed. What you just said, that is, and that's a personal thing. You know, I wouldn't say that it's 100% right all the time or that I have all the answers, but how you just described this player based on the quick look that I got and what we've seen on paper, I would just tell you that that's my speed. I'll leave it at that.
I've been confident, like there's a Gavin Grahovic type feel where, hey, this is a corner profile. Like I'm sure in high school, Grohovec had a summer more where he swung and missed.
Mhm.
I really like Gavin Grohovec early on in high school. He swings and misses. The industry kind of backs off him. And what are they doing now? We're talking about
Yeah.
Gavin Grohovec as a top 10 pick. He just has a big
Was he
freshman
strong?
year.
Was he
Yes.
strong? You know, he was
Yes.
physical. He was strong. We talked about what is it about these guys a lot of times. They're strong. They're strong right now. They're men. They can impact the ball. They can hit with wood. The ball comes off their bat. We measure it in ways that gets us comfortable with it and exit velos and all that kind of stuff. Gavin Grohovec was strong.
It's so moving on to this entire crew, like these are the more fascinating guys, right? These are not the speedy center fielder. We're betting on the position. We'll see where the ceiling takes them. These are guys
Mhm.
where you really got to dig in. So like a Caleb Barnett, yeah, maybe he's a little bit different just because freak frame, like there is so much to dream on. And I think he could be a monster helium guy over the next 10 months.
He was, you know, he kind of grew on me a little bit at East Coast. It wasn't my flavor when I first started watching him. He did hit at least one home run. I got all these notes everywhere. Most of his power was dead pull. I would love to see if this guy can use the field. It would make me feel that he's not a spot hitter, that his barrel's just working to the same spot because he's got the leverage. It was like a Chris Bryant kind of body type when you saw him.
Yes.
He made some really nice plays at third base and so on. But ultimately, that's great. Can you hit? People are going to pay for the bat. So a guy like Barnett, he did give you some production at East Coast Pro, which is great. He hit a long home run down the left field line, but the field was kind of tilted. So to the point on players getting better, this is a player where you look at and you say, I really want to see him drive the ball the other way, backspin the ball the other way, stay inside the ball. Don't make me feel like you're just kind of a spot hitter or a groove swing.
Let me ask you this, because I'm going to throw some, again, our background info. Our scouts do such a great job. Barnett's a PA transfer. So he's from Pennsylvania, moved down about, let's say, 18 months ago. I was with you. He took awesome BP at USA, watching the trials. Hey, this guy's different. It's coming off. He's in the zone for a while. Is it going to transfer? Can he hit in games? Because a little bit, I think that the classification he plays at in Alabama is not 7A. I think he's more of a 5A guy. Is it going to transfer over? He did have some of those moments similar to your East Coast Pro look. How does that position him for this year's draft? Because I do think the upside's there, so I could easily see a Southeast scout saying, I'm all in on this kid. And then we're going to eventually call this the Austin Riley group. Who's going to turn into Austin Riley?
Yeah, and I mean, there's a fine line there between Austin Riley and getting nothing. You know, it's like
true.
Or getting, you know, there are the Grohovics of the world that go to college and they immediately become Grohovic. And you're like, we should have had that a little higher on the board. Or Spencer Torkelson, another good example. Andrew Vaughn, on and on and on. JJ Bleday, who we took in 2019. He was good right away when I coached him at Vanderbilt. So there are other players that aren't like that. And that's why I think with a guy like Barnett, that's great information. I didn't know that. You just kind of like sprung that on me that he came from Pennsylvania. But that's the stuff that you need to know to contextualize the development of the player. Where's he from? What type of development situation was he around? This is the job of the area scout, to provide that context and color so that the other people evaluate him can go, okay, I get this. I've seen this kind of player before.
Let me ask you, how many teams do you think are comfortable? So if you're just putting Fiend and Barnett side by side, right? Like the huge upside, Barnett, but like, is there more comfort in taking a guy like Fiend because, hey, this Southern California kid, he's going to go dominate the Arizona League. He'll be fine. We could probably send him right to low A because he's seen more than enough. And it's kind of covering your tracks where like, hey, he's going to look good for a year. At least, not to say he won't look good forever, but like, at least I know in the immediacy, this draft will look good.
You know, when you're building, I don't like using this word too much, but when you're building models and you're finding ways to separate players, that's essentially what models are doing. They're taking a bunch of very difficult information and they're trying to make sense of it. Of course, that's an adjuster. +1, +2, however you want to weight it to Gavin Fiend. +3, +5, +6, whatever you want to do. At Southern California, you know, we're going to talk about Grindlinger a little bit from Huntington Beach. There's something to be said about good players that come from good areas that are around a lot of other good players. There's something to be said about a good player that stands on his own as a good player. And then you layer on top of it, oh yeah, dad's Matt Holliday. Oh yeah, dad is Dino Ebel. You know, like it's like, so it's the same thing with the geographic stuff. You just get more comfortable with it. And that's what directors and organizations are looking for. They're looking for comfort in a selection and a clear pathway to the outcome that they're looking for, which is a everyday major league player or better.
This intangible moving forward, like even another intangible guy, Boston Kellner, who I think you and I talked about a lot because you're a big hockey guy. Kellner is a big hockey guy. Moved down from Colorado, hit like 800 at Hamilton High School this year. I don't know if the air is thinner just at Hamilton, but like he hit a lot of home runs. He's a consummate winner, two-way guy who's done really well. He's a guy that I really like, but again, right, has done some shortstop. He's more of a third base, maybe offensive second baseman, but winner profile. Those are the guys that you and I really love. Sean Gamble, along the same lines, where positionally, where is he going to be? Looked actually really good in center field at times. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster with Sean Gamble, I would say, in the industry. I actually like the swing at USA. I thought there was some compactness to it. He was down in time. He also got thrown into a couple, I'll call it the JD Dix situation, where there were some pinch hits late. So he doesn't look good in one game because he comes in left on left, and that's just not fair in the seventh inning at 100 degrees. But those are two guys, again, like they're not a shortstop profile. We're kind of taking the bat. We like the winner. Maybe I just wrote an article. Kellner kind of fits that Dickerson type model, Luke Dickerson. Where is he going to play type deal?
It's interesting. Sometimes you go out and you see a lot of games and you can get comfortable with a player. You say, well, you're comfortable with this guy. You saw him for 7 games. How come you're not comfortable with that guy? You just nailed it. Very, very comfortable with what we're getting in Boston Kellner. Excuse me, not Kellner. Kellner. Very comfortable. Super aggressive, super strong, can really throw, is going to defend on a corner, has impact with the bat, really fits nicely right there at third base. You're like, yeah, I got it. I understand what doesn't mean it's perfect. I can get down and break down his swing if you like, and we can get into the weeds there, but you get very comfortable with what you have there. Gamble, I didn't get him at East Coast Pro, and he goes to area codes, and it was really tough to work through. He didn't get a lot of reps in center field. You didn't get comfortable with that. And then all of a sudden at the All-American game, to your point on flashes, he runs the ball down in right center field at Petco Park, and you're like, oh, yeah, maybe you can play center field. He doesn't have consistently good at bats, but when the ball, this is area codes. He doesn't have great at bats all the time, especially early in the event, but late in the event. And this is the reporting part, because reporting is important. It's part of the evaluation. You watch his improvement over the event. The first day he comes out and he punches out, he looks terrible. I mean, this guy, Gamble, 3 punch outs, easy. They punched him out easy. But then as the event went on, it turned into a bunch of walks and a bunch of 100-mile-an-hour exit velocity. So there's clearly something there with Gamble that I got it. I'm just trying to figure out, is it a swing thing? Is it an approach thing? I'm good with the center field. I know that there's strength in the swing. Just got to see him. Is it a guy that, the barrel adjustability? Can he adjust the barrel? What kind of player? Is he going to be a guy like Brian, ultimately become like a Brian Reynolds? Interestingly enough, this guy's going to Vandy, right? I think Sean Gamble's going to Vandy.
Yep.
Is he going to be a Brian Reynolds kind of player? So he was more interesting than he was comfortable. How about that?
It's interesting, and add into that the Cronenworth type where he can move him around the field. He has always hit the ball really hard. It's one of the rare things. The last 2 years, just everything that comes off his bat is just like, did that really come off at 100 at 16 years old? Didn't even look like he swung. So he's one of the more intriguing ones. How does it for him? The fact that he's at IMG, they have a great team. Like nobody, I don't know if any school team outside of the Trinity League in Southern California, Corona High School, gets scouted as much as IMG. If you're a scout, you can just roll over to the field. We're going to see a prospect today. How does that help him to where his season actually does matter, which would be in contrast to the James Wood season of the swing and miss?
I think it matters a lot. It's just like Southern California. You see these guys. It's going to make you more comfortable because just like when we go out and we scout, we talked about Laviolette, right? We talk about Laviolette. We talk about the reason why Laviolette and Schubert get you're comfortable going into the year because you're going to have a number of opportunities to make a decision. You're going to have you're going to watch Nolan Schubert go 1 for 10 and look poor, not good. Then he's going to have to make an adjustment. And we're going to be there for that. You're not going to get that opportunity with Caleb Burnett. You're not going to get that opportunity maybe with a player from Wisconsin like an AJ Vukovic. and so on and so forth. So those decisions in the summer, to our point on Gamble, you're going to get those opportunities, which is great. And it should make people very, very comfortable. My point on the 100 mile an hour, I'm just looking at a sheet from area codes. Poor in the beginning of area codes, and then it's just hundo in the gap, hundo on the ground, hundo in the gap. I want to say it's 5 of them. And there's a bunch of walks sprinkled in. So it just kind of got better and better and better. And if you can just continue down that road, I think someone's going to probably want to bite on this, like a Colby Rasmus or something like that from years ago.
I agree with you on that sense for sure. I liked what I got from Sean Gamble this summer. But moving forward, just kind of wrapping up this group because it's really interesting. And I mean, there's 15 guys that we have on this list. These are all top 100 type guys. Kelvin Paulino can really hit. I think he's actually going down to IMG, which again, he'll be seen plenty there. Josh Proctor, who had a good summer, big physical kid. He'll get plenty of looks in California. Jason Fultz, who we'll circle back to here in a second, PA kid.
Dean Moss.
Dean Moss. We'll get to him with the outfield. I'm going to compare him to some other guys, but Josh Owens, Nick Partridge, Sebastian Norman, who's just a freak, Nathan Eisfelder, who you saw a ton of this summer, who can really hit. Our guy's going to push in on that. Mario Magana. Eisfelder specifically looks like, oh, nobody bid on that, and then he goes to Tennessee, and we're talking about, oh yeah, like this guy explodes in Knoxville. Like that's all they keep doing. But that group specifically, because of the profile, how important does it become where they're at in the spring? So we were talking a little bit about Vukovic in Wisconsin, how like I think there is some comfort in Wisconsin prospects right now. The guys do such a great job in the Midwest, the scouting and just regionality of it. A kid who's in North Carolina or Florida or Georgia or Texas, if their profile is like this, do they have a greater reach, greater chance to elevate their lane because of where they're at in the country?
Yeah, they do. That's a very broad brush to say that they have a chance to elevate their lane. You know, going in that when you're watching a Northern player, that you're going to have to be a little bit more precise with your evaluation because you don't have the wiggle room come spring. Our boy Gamble, he's going to give us some wiggle room. Moss is going to give us wiggle room. The guys in Southern California, they give us a little wiggle room to improve because of some of the competition. You know, when you're dealing with AJ Vukovic, no, but you need to know that as an organization going in. And as a player, the player needs to be aware of this. It's really important. You have to find other pathways to projection sometimes with the Northern guys. As an example, I don't even know if my staff knew this. I flew up and I watched AJ Vukovic play basketball. And he's out there, small Wisconsin school. This is the 2020 draft for the opening tip. And he got up really, really high. So it wasn't just a first baseman. You know, this was a guy that was very, very athletic. So you're trying to find other ways, other avenues to get comfortable with the player. And usually it's some version of athleticism, body, and knowing the player, knowing what Alex Kirilloff is all about. Really, really important.
You talk about Vukovic. He and Kobe Mayo were like the first guys at a young age where even before like the massive exit velocities were kind of tracking, they were always a note like he just hits the ball really hard all the time. It's a little awkward, but it comes off different. Anyway, really interesting crew. Like take a look at that because the tiering system of those guys and how they're situated on the board, there's so many factors to how you separate those guys. So we talked about Fien especially, I think is one of the more intriguing guys because of where he's at in the country, the production level, what he's been able to do, the way the ball comes off. I'm really intrigued. I also think it's a huge opportunity. The Super 60, what I love about the Super 60 is, and you and I talked about this, it sets travel schedules, right? You come there and all of a sudden I need to go out and see Cash Mayfield. I need to go see Chris Lavonis. I need to book a trip to Wisconsin to see this guy. I need to go see somebody in Missouri. Like I need to go see those guys, which I'm excited about the Super 60 again this year after having 19 guys drafted last year. I think there was close to $20 million in signing bonus. Probably more if Chris Lavonis had ended up signing. But I think it's a huge appointment for them.
Here's something for you. And this is a shout out to the players from my perspective. You guys have run Super 60 for how many years now? And it's gotten better and better and better every year. And it's been a long time you've been doing the Super 60. If I'm a player and I put in the work in the off season, that is your moment where you can show teams, hey, you raise the flag and you say, I've closed the gap. I've changed my swing. I've changed my delivery. I developed a breaking ball. And the list goes on of things that if you're aware enough and you have people around you at this time of the year, as we get late into August, early September, you're getting back to school, and you can have the self-awareness that there's a part of your game that you need to fix or work on. The Super 60 is your chance to show it, so that when those directors or national cross-checkers roll in there, all of a sudden they're going, oh, wait a second. We now have to circle back on this guy because he's made the jump. And that's encouraging when guys do that. Some guys don't have to do that. Some guys do have to do that. So great opportunity for the players.
I can't wait for February. Now shifting over to the outfield, which I will tell you, DJ, as much as we love the shortstops and kind of up the middle guys, the outfield is more eclectic. I hope that's the right word. I may just be using a big word without knowing the meaning, which wouldn't be the first time. I think there is more chance for movement within this group for different tastes, different models to like different guys. But at the top with Ty Peoples, who we really like, Georgia product, we'll talk about in a second. Whether he sticks in the middle, it's probably more of a corner profile, but the frame is getting bigger, stronger. He showed off some power. Jacob Parker, who had a really nice summer. You got to see both those guys a fair amount. What's your assessment? And obviously we're going left-handed hitters for both these guys.
This is the group. And what did you use? You said eclectic, maybe the varied opinions. Once you move into the outfield, it becomes really divisive. It's not, sometimes with the infielders, you walk in and you go, I see it, I like it, I just don't like it as much as you. An outfielder, you're more apt to walk in and somebody goes, man, I really like that. And somebody else goes, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't like it at all.
Really?
It's very, very divisive with the outfielders because we know how, especially when you're not dealing with maybe a center fielder. Can we talk about Ryan Clifford? That happens. That was a great pick by Chris Gross and the Astros a few years ago. They've now unloaded him and traded him to the Mets, I believe. But that was, man, those are difficult picks to make because we were talking before about players have to consistently, there isn't any wiggle room for error. I don't care if you're in Chicago or you're in Southern California or you're in Florida. It doesn't, at that point, it doesn't matter. Jacob Parker, he better hit every time I'm in the ballpark. I don't want to see any, he just didn't have a good 2 or 3 games. That's the burden on him, and when he does it, you pull the magnet like you did with James Wood, now James ran a little bit and whatnot, but these guys are as a group, they're very, very difficult. Your question on Parker, right?
Well, DJ, let me stop you for 1 second just to say James Wood actually torched the Yankees this past week. He was stealing bags. It takes him like 6 steps to get between bases.
Yeah. It's just, and that. So you got the Nyans guys we just talked about. We talk about Nolan Arenado. He was on the dirt. We talk about Austin Riley. He was on the dirt. If you get into this group in the outfield, the tools need to be big. You can say whatever you want about James Wood and the fact that he struck out he had more strikeouts than base hits during his senior year, I think at IMG or some kind of strange stat like that. You can lean right into that stat. That is fine. You can't ignore that. That is the performance. It is what it is. But you also can't ignore that he has 70 raw power with a 60 arm and he's a 60 runner and he's a 60 athlete. So when we talk about these corner outfielders, you really want to have that feeling that there's large tools. 55 to 60, that's usually not enough. Before you're going to pull it really hot.
So let me talk. I'm going to bring up 2 players, and we always talk about where's the war come from with the bat. Talk Green. So Riley Green, when we were going through 2019, I loved Riley Green. He hit for 4 years. Every time we talk about the ball sounds different. The ball sounded different on that kid. The bat was in the zone forever. He always hit. And you can talk about when you're scouting. Kind of ran kind of floppy. I guess is how I would describe it. He's going to be a corner profile. And
he looked a little duck-footed.
Yes. But he now plays center field. And it was always like, he can't play center field. Like, that guy's playing center, but James Wood is playing left. So when it comes down to who's going to play center field, he just found a way to do it. So talk a little bit about the Riley Green aspect of what he was able to do to elevate his tools that made it that much better and easier for the Tigers.
I mentioned with the Northern players, and again, a lot of these things you're trying to paint it with a broad brush to illustrate points, but the Northern players, you got to really know. You got to know all the players. You got to know what makes the kid tick. You got to know what he's all about. We can call it competitive makeup, whatever. Riley Green was wired different. He was a duck-footed, non-athletic looking out. I love Riley Green. This is a sore subject for me. He was a duck-footed, awkward-looking athlete that can hit. And then all of a sudden he shows up in the spring and his run grade's a whole grade better. Why did that happen? The care level was through the roof. Baseball IQ was through the roof. And he can still, oh, by the way, and he can still hit. So I thought he was kind of that a little bit awkward, going back to my Yankee days, like an awkward-ish Bernie Williams type of center fielder where it doesn't look like a Crawford or something like that, Nick Crawford or Justin Crawford, excuse me.
Justin Crawford. I'm thinking Braylon Payne from this year. Sure.
It's just not smooth and easy and glide around like a Dexter Fowler and stuff like that, but he can just get it done. And his willingness to improve his run speed and stuff like that. So it really this goes back to that theme that seems to be coming up again and again as we're talking. These players need to understand their strengths and their deficiencies and how to close those gaps. Riley knew how to close the gap.
Well, let me ask you that even more to a team philosophy or a club philosophy, a department philosophy, to a guy like, would it have been divisive within the industry or within the clubs where a Riley Green would have been, where I'm watching, you talk about Justin Crawford, big speed guy. He's done really well so far for the Phillies. Braylon Payne this year, big time runner. I'm sure some guys are like, is this guy going to hit? How divisive can it be to where, hey, we have comfort in the speed versus the Tigers who seem to like, hey, we are going to go after this bat. We're comfortable with this guy. I know they have a different director now, but is it in the industry? Because, right, we see Riley go so high, but maybe on 6 other boards, he was a second, probably not Riley, but Braylon Payne very much could have been much lower on other boards. Is that something that can be seen?
Yeah, I think that it comes that's where the performance might give a nod to a player. If I can take us back to 2019, there were 3 players in consideration with our first pick in 2019. It was J.J. Bleday, it was C.J. Abrams, and it was Riley Green. That's it. We were not taking Nick Lodolo. Of course we like Nick Lodolo. He was really, really good. We just weren't going to take a pitcher because of where we were as an organization. So then it comes down to 3 players. You get your college guy who's got all the track record, and you got 2 really talented high school players. So how do you determine who you're going to take? When it comes to the 2 high school players, the common theme, and obviously they play different positions. Abrams is now a really nice shortstop for the Washington Nationals, and Riley Green's off doing his thing. When you're making a decision
both
between those 2, both all-stars, good point. They both would have been really, really good picks. Maybe they would have been a better pick, than J.J. Bleday, right? There's different reasons why you make those decisions, but for the sake of separating those players, the thing that made both of those high school players move up the draft board wasn't just because they had tools and talent. Both of those guys were really, really good when you saw them throughout the summer. Period. End of story. Whether you select them or not, you got to pick the right player. But and decisions can come down to other things. But in terms of them making it to that point on the board, the common theme was those guys raked in different ways. Abrams loves to hit the ball on the ground and never missed. And he would use his speed and off he would go. And now he's developed some juice. But Riley Green was more spray the ball around the field. But at the end of the day, when you picked up the 2 stat sheets, they both said the same thing. This kid can hit, and he can hit right now. And you go back and look at their minor league stats. What did they do? They showed up and hit right now. If you can say that about Braylon Payne, then maybe he goes in that conversation. If you can't quite say that about Braylon Payne or fill in the blank, whatever player it is, then he probably moves down the board.
Hitters hit. Well, you talk about separation, guys. I might have to put you on the spot here because at least talking a little bit about these guys. We'll go even past Danny Wallace, who we're going to see at the All-American game. Another one of those freaks from Nebraska. Those dudes, there's something going on in those cornfields right now where those guys are just coming out and can really run, throw, hit. They have 5-tool potential. Really excited to see Danny Wallace. But I want to talk to you about the state of California. because there are some outfielders and some interesting athletes.
Oh yeah,
that are we have had a ton of conversations about. And I think the next year, the amount of big leaguers that come out of the state of California is obviously well documented, and they will let you know immediately when you step into the Golden State how many big leaguers they have.
I know where you're going with this.
Brock Sell, Brock Kettleson, Alec Blair. So they're 3 NorCal guys. I'm not even going to throw Josiah Hartshorn, who I categorized as an outfielder because first baseman. I think he's more than athletic enough. Actually, I would compare it similar to Lavalette at Texas, because he was in a similar light where they put him at first base, and I was like, this guy can run around really well. You could probably put him in the outfield. We'll talk about him at a different time. Those NorCal outfielders, the two of us have had a lot of conversations. I'm sure the area guys are going to have conversations. They're going to be divisive all over the place. Give me your eval on those 3 guys to start, and I'll give you some backstory.
My eval is yes and yes and yes. The winner is Stanford here. The winner looks like it's going to be Oklahoma. Like, this is a yes, yes, yes. You just nailed it. I knew where you were going with this one. These players in different ways were exceedingly fun to watch. Brock Sell, because right now, today, on August, whatever it is, 30th, he is the best player of the group. Just write it down. I'm not saying that's going to end that way. That guy can really play. And he can do everything. He can defend. He can whistle balls all over the field. He can run. He puts together quality at bats. It's almost like this, like Eli Willett's version of the center fielder. He's just really good. And it was obvious immediately. I love guys that show up to these events and they're just good day one. We talk about Ethan Moore, kid from Chicago. We talk about Brock Sell. We talk about Eli Willett's guy. Doesn't mean you have to do that. But man, does that not catch your eye? These kids are under a lot of pressure. They want to impress. They're still 17 years old. And this guy shows up day one. He goes rocket double, rocket single off a left-handed pitcher, running 4.1 to 4.2, ran a 4.09, plays center field, like just a really good player. You and I talked a little bit about, we were texting about like how good was Pete Crow Armstrong, because this guy's not real big and physical compared to the other 2 guys we're about to talk about. This guy's just a really, really good player right now with tools. Okay.
So let me add that. So the interesting thing more about Sell, just having the back history, this dude just competes. And it was the same thing a year ago. USA Trials, I thought he was a tier below guys. So throughout the workout, just the way he handled the barrel and BP, which can be hit or miss at times there. If you were just seeing him for the first time, he would have been tiered lower than I would have had him. And it was something I ignored. And then when you went out and got a chance to see him out west, it was like, that's water finding its level. This kid is that dude. He always.
So you go ahead and finish. Yeah, I got a question about Sell, actually.
No, go on. And he also pitches. There's a lot to like about Brock Sell, and the NorCal scouts do such a great job. And I'm a huge. I think NorCal and Carolinas are my like. Hey, I love to find guys there because they just kind of become really good.
When you hear scouts say this a lot. So I had scouts that wanted to put this on our evaluation. I didn't agree with it. I didn't want to put it on the evaluation, even though I understood 100% what they meant. They wanted like a baseball player box. Oh, he's just a good baseball player. And I'm like, yeah, what does that mean? I know what it means, right? But I want you to tell me to me, what it means is he's good at baseball. Well, how do I know he's good at baseball? Because every time I see him, he collects hits. He collects outs. He does all the little things. Mookie Betts did that. This guy does that. How do I know that, or how do I get the confidence that we talked about Ebel the other day is such a good hitter? Well, because every time he steps in the box, it's a quality at bat. He works counts. He has quiet takes, yada, yada, yada. That's just what it is. This guy here, good baseball player with tools, good baseball player with tools. My question is, in terms of him closing the gap, moving from tier 3 to 2 to 1 on some of these other bigger, stronger players, if there was something that I would like to know more about with Brock Sell, is this guy strong? I didn't get a chance to get right up on him. Was he weaker when he was a younger kid? He doesn't look very physical. Has a nice frame at 6'1"-ish, it looks like, but he just didn't look as physical or as strong as like our boy we talked about, Gamble from IMG. I'd like to know how strong this guy is, how strong his forearms are, and if that lent itself at a younger age to not standing out like the other players. Because in this environment, he stood out.
It's interesting with those 3 because And I'd love to hear your opinion on the ceilings, what you're going after, what you can get. And you talk about Brock Sell, he's the best player. He's the guy right now. You got Alec Blair, who's like a 4-star hoops recruit. I think he's doing both at Oklahoma. He's got some charisma to him. There's awesome background stuff. He's definitely more raw. Then you got Kettleson, who's got a real smooth left-handed stroke. He also pitches. There's some Spencer Jones-ish to him.
Yes.
He'll be 17-10 at draft. There's a lot. Each of them are amazing in their own right. And I think I just don't know what the flavor would be and how you're pushing in on what the upside of this guy is. And I think you really got to get in there and scout as much as you can. There'll probably be a lot of scouts at the Alec Blair Hoops games, I'd imagine.
I like McDonald's All-Americans. I'm going to skip over Kettleson, and that's not to disrespect Kettleson because I really like him quite a bit. And I absolutely love the Stanford recruiting class. My gosh. It's just, they'll probably show up. I don't know. Like that's a really good recruiting class.
Well, what does that do to him too?
They're going to get 3. Yeah, there you go. That's the money deal. They're going to get, Stanford is going to get 3 years of production out of Sell and Kettleson. Kettleson are going to get both ways. I don't know what the kid's motivated to do, but he was really good on the mound too. So, you look at these two players. If I'm Stanford, I'm excited. I got my 1 or 2 hole hitter, and I've got my 3 hole hitter for the next 3 years. That's exciting. I want to skip Kettleson, and that's not to disrespect him at all, because I do like him quite a bit. I want to go to Blair.
Okay.
Because I think this is a little bit more polarizing. Yeah. When you start to say to me, okay, who is the best player right now? I'm going to confidently tell you that it's Brock Sell. That's just my opinion. If you tell me what's going to happen if the stars align, well, then you're going with Mr. Blair. That cat is really, really, really talented. And in many respects, extremely raw. You're going to have to be able to swallow some real ugly at-bats at times with Blair. Disconnected, not sure if he saw it. What's his level of timing and pitch recognition? He does things throughout a baseball game over the course of 4 or 5 games that are going to make you go, I don't know, what are his swing decisions? I'm sure the analysts want to hear that. What are his swing decisions? I can tell you what his athleticism is. I can tell you what his raw power is going to be. I can tell you what it's going to look like going down the road or what it could look like down the road. You just have to be willing to swallow the risk. Your question, which route would you go with these 2 players? I'd be willing to bet that some organizations are going Sell every day of the week.
Okay.
And there's other organizations that are going to go, no, just give me Blair and I'll deal with it if he flops.
Well, let me ask you this. How much would it impact you if you had an awesome underclass organization and scouting department who were able to see the fact that Alec Blair really got a lot better in a year span? Even with the hoops, whatever it was, what I was impressed by was like, this kid looks better. Adjustments have been made. He looks better, even in just BP.
This contextualization of this player, he's one of the few players in the class that are both talented from a tools standpoint. The physical tools part of his evaluation is going to look really, really good. The skill part of his evaluation right now might fall a little bit short. That's okay. Okay? The context here, how many at-bats has he had? How much time does he spend in the summer with baseball? Does he want to play baseball? Is that important? People were worried about, Holiday, right? Matt Holiday was a football player. I believe who's the big first baseman done for the Reds for all those years from Texas. People were worried about that. Was Giancarlo Stanton going to go play at USC or wherever he was going to go? So you've got to navigate that with this player. If you find out that he wants to be a baseball player, that becomes really, really interesting because this progression, this curve can just accelerate as he moves into professional baseball. And to this point, I don't want to spend too much time talking about this, but when you get a little bit further down the draft board, end of round 1 through round 2, you have one of 2 choices, whether you're taking a pitcher or you're taking a hitter. Do I want certainty and do I want high floor, which there's nothing wrong with that. Would be great if you're in the situation like the D-backs were in this last year. You just take it both. But if you had to make a choice, and this is not a rhetorical question, what would your choice be? You are going to be uncomfortable. Like when you pull James Wood, I know we see what this looks like now, but there's a lot of other players that it didn't pan out that way. It certainly didn't pan out that way for Josh Mears, who went out with big raw power. Padres took him too, and it just kind of fell apart. But you have to take that chance to get Matt Olson. And when you start asking yourself, what is my goal in that comp to second round? This might be my last chance to get that guy. And that's where a guy like Alec Blair moves up the board, because you're not so worried about what might happen on the downside. You're nervous about missing out on your last chance to get Stanton, to get Riley Green, to get Judge.
Is there any thought internally, and this is even moving beyond internally, where a guy like James Wood, if we shine it up and it looks good, we have a chance to get Juan Soto? Like, can we build it up quickly? So Alec Blair, if this looks good in 18 months, that is a really sexy, a really nice trade piece. And there's some value we can get out of this.
That's what clearly the Padres and AJ Preller haven't had any qualms about moving their prospects for major league product. They've unloaded their entire farm system. But when we look back at the trades over the last few years, it's very in vogue to have these kinds of players. So yeah, they become very, very valuable. Look at the trade deadline over the last few years. Who's moving? It's not the college piece. Yeah, there's been some college pieces, of course, but like this high school premium athlete, young player holds a lot of value. And when you have that in your deck of cards, you have some real leverage.
Well, let's keep going through these outfielders, which I'm looking at this list of 30 guys we have here, and there's many more that are going to raise, right? We talked about some guys who make jumps. There's a lot of big four states here: California, Florida, Texas, Georgia, all well represented. I do want to get to a guy who you were able to see who are not, or two guys who are not from those states. Jordan Serrano, a New York product, and William Patrick, who's from Louisiana. Both guys that we really like internally, who, let me say it right off the bat, because I've been pressing you for a month on this. Serrano or Patrick, who are we taking?
I'm going to go Patrick.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go Patrick. I don't really want to make that decision right now, but because I'm not in that chair, I've done that for so long. I'm going to go Patrick. And I think I'm going to do it based on frame size, overall athleticism. Serrano might have him on the tools a little bit right now. I was very intrigued by Patrick at East Coast Pro, and it was tough because if you said who's coming to the, this All-American game or who's going to that All-American game, those were the finalists. So I think putting those two guys next to each other in and of itself is a really a good discussion. I think I'm going to tilt towards Patrick for the athleticism.
And frame size. Well, I think he was a 4-star receiver too, which would only helps you there. I will also say,
dropping this stuff on me.
I can feel the collective Louisiana area, old former area, rolling their eyes at, oh yeah, we're going to go in and scout another Louisiana kid come into LSU for the entire spring until he eventually pulls his name out.
Well, I'm going to throw this out there too, and this is a tough one. Louisiana's those players are really interesting. Each area of this country presents a different challenge, whether it's Louisiana or it's Alabama or it's Ohio, or they're unique. We all grow up different. We grow up in different culture. That's what makes the country great. We grow up in different culture with different people, and we're surrounded by different types of people, not good or bad, just different. And you look at these Louisiana players, man, they end up at LSU, they end up at Ole Miss, they end up wherever at Texas, and they become awesome. They become awesome prospects. When they're coming out of high school, I don't know why they're not that interested in. I don't know what the reason is they're not that interested in signing. I wish they were. I wish the track record was better with high school players, because it's not a talent issue. Louisiana kids are supremely talented. Would anybody say that Will Schmidt wasn't good? My gosh, breaking ball, this and that. The Cicchini brothers, and the list goes on and on and on. It's just a lot of time they like to go to college first. So that doesn't stop you from saying he's super talented, though. And that doesn't mean he's not going to go on to college and become a great prospect and in a few years be a first-round pick or something. Great. I didn't know he was a 4-star football guy.
Yeah, he's a big-time football player. So those are really talented guys. The whole group, I can't stress it enough, just how these guys are all kind of clumped into it. Like, let's see what they have. I'm excited to see some of these guys at the Super 60. going back to a guy we were going to talk a little bit about in the corner, and Dean Moss, who I think will be another hot button prospect. I actually love the buggy whip of the barrel, the hands. He's always aggressive. Now there can be some swing and miss at times, but there's power. Not the biggest frame. I would say he's closer to 5'10" when looking at it, and has played a lot of corner outfield. So I would be curious to see can he do a Riley Green type? Can we move him to center field? That's something that I would want to see. He will be at IMG. What were your thoughts of Dean Moss? Because I actually thought he was great at USA. He did some really good things. Thought he would make that team. Didn't. They still went on the gold. It's all good. What were your thoughts of Dean Moss for your first time seeing him? And he's another NorCal. You could throw him right in the mix with Brock Sell and those guys. He's from NorCal.
What was trying to find this name here really quick as you were talking? I was listening to you. Noah, the hard thrower out of Virginia. We're going to talk about pitching later on. Noah Yoder.
Okay.
Big time velocity. Will Patrick didn't have any problem with that. Had a really, really good at bat. You think about memorable moments, and Serrano, certainly, I don't want to digress too much, but and Serrano had a whole bunch of hard contact and did some really, really good things for the Yankees out at the area code games and stuff and hit the ball hard. There was one memorable at bat where Yoder versus Will Patrick, and it was athleticism was on display, field to hit, all that. So, anyways, so Moss.
Throw him into the Brock Sell mix.
Yeah, Moss, man. Moss, if there was something to be had with Moss, you wish he'd be, if he was a better runner. I'm going to throw this out there right now, if he's listening. If he was a better runner and he can close that gap, I want to say he ran like a 6'9" or a 7 at East Coast Pro. He's got some lightning in his hands. I love the way the ball comes off his bat. I had an opportunity to see him multiple times. I loved the fact we talk about players that want to play. This guy went to East Coast Pro, then he went to area code games, and all he did, looking at his stuff, is square balls up all over the place. There is some pull to his swing because of how he loads the bat, but he does show the ability to hit the ball everywhere. When you go to Long Beach, remember we were talking about Coy James the other day. You don't just stand in the batter's box in Birmingham and loft the ball over the second wall and like it's easy. That you don't see that happen. Coy did that. You know what else you don't see? When you go to Long Beach in the morning, in this case, it was the afternoon, but you don't go to Long Beach and watch guys lofting balls out of the yard. It just doesn't really want to go. This guy went out of the yard, center field the other way during BP. And we knew that he had strength and we knew that he had bat speed, but his ability to do that just absolutely confirms it. And with this guy, a lot of it's the hands and the wrists and the forearms and the looseness in his swing and the buggy whip in his swing, kind of like Gibby. We talked about Gibby the other day. We talk about Southstein, guys that can use their hands. It doesn't mean they're the perfect hitter. It doesn't mean they don't need to clean some things up. Doesn't mean that they don't have some holes, but guys that can use their hands and get it to different parts of the zone, that's what this guy can do, and he can do it with some authority. So he was a really, really good bat prospect. I want to see him run better.
All right, you're on the board. Brock Sell or Dean Moss right now? Uh-oh. The clock is ticking. He's going to ask for an extension.
I'm going with Sell. No. I told you don't take an extension during the draft. That's really taboo. You roll your eyes. You can't. If you're
That's
not prepared,
rookie stuff.
Take it. Taking Evo. I'm sorry. Was that a piece?
Anyway, really fascinating outfield crew. Again, built with a lot of Georgia, Florida, California, all throughout. Even Stutzer and Terrence Bowen are guys who played a lot of infield. We pushed them to the outfield for this list because I ultimately think they shift to the center of the field. Even Bowen in center field. Stutzer, I think, is definitely going to shift to center soon.
Shooter, I need to stop you. We talked about Alec Blair. We need to talk. No, I'm not going to dive into Stutzer, okay?
Okay.
You want to talk about memorable moments? You want to talk about what athletes can do? He is not a finished product at the plate at all. He made a play at East Coast Pro. One of the hardest things to do as an outfielder is take that ball right at you. He's a shortstop. He's a second baseman. He's a left fielder. He's a right fielder. We saw him at the NPI. He took a ball in center field. It was a rocket over his head, and he stuck it in his back pocket like it was nothing. And that's why he scores all those touchdowns for Pope High School. He is one hell of an athlete.
I gotta check
one
back
hell
and
of an.
see if he's playing football this fall. If not, I mean, they're going to be very mad at
He
the
is.
baseball coach.
He is playing
But
football.
oh, is he definitely? Oh, good for
Yeah.
him.
So
Very good for
competitor.
him. But like beyond, Nick Diaz is a swing that I love from Florida. He's a Stoneman Douglas kid. I think there's tons of upside. Anthony Pack, you got to see a fair amount,
Mhm.
can really go track it in center. Braxton Van Cleve, who, again, not a finished product, but another football player from Texas, left-handed. There's some physicality there. Ethan Porter, who we'll get to talking some more Huntington Beach guys, but he had a really nice summer. I think guys are going to be locked in on that, along with Josiah Hartshorn, who I was telling some guys at USA because he hit left-handed all summer. He's a right-handed hitter, had an injury that forced him to hit left-handed, which mind-blowing. You're going to face the best arms, and this dude just goes out there and play. And telling some guys who are seeing him for the first time, like, I'm letting you know, this will be a day one name. People will be buzzing about this next spring. This guy, all he does is hit. There's some we were making up words, differenceness. There's just something different to him. And the way he goes out and plays, very much similar to Jace Lavalette, and the fact that he was playing a lot of first base. I think he can easily go to the outfield. But I do want to, unless you have anything else on outfielders, we're going pretty long-winded here.
I think that, like, just generally speaking, Shooter, like this kind of, I know we want to celebrate players and we want to raise them up and all that kind of stuff, but we also want to be objective. We need to be objective. That's really important. Objectively, this is a fun class. This is a really fun class to scout.
And you know what? The fact that the big regions are kind of strong again, in each pocket actually has some good stuff, which is what I love about our company. We're able to have so many of the inner workings of behind the scenes stories, the tools, whatever's going on. Make sure you're staying with us at prepbaseball.com. I do want to shift over to the catchers, which you and I have talked a lot about high school catching and since you've come on board here. And Rhett, we may have to utilize this in a separate segment at some point to split up these three segments. So make sure you take a note on that. High school catching. And what do we do right at the top? Braden Jackson, a right catcher, and these guys are all kind of alluring. And we're going to dive into, we'll get to Omar Cerna, who you got to see. It just evaporates some balls. And just, you talked about guys having trouble.
I like that.
Some guys having trouble with Blair Field. I mean, that guy would fit very well into the Big West at nighttime. There's no Marine Lair that's stopping what he's putting up there. But
him and Owen Jenkins, nothing's going to stop their power.
Braden Jackson is a guy who we love from last year's that All-American game. There's serious raw power. Everything comes easy to him. What I loved about his ability in the box is he slowed things down with ease. Never sped up. The power is going to be there. And again, I actually think it helps his prospecthood. The fact that beyond being the top catcher in the class, he can really receive. He's quiet back there. I think of a Joe Mauer type. Rest the cup of coffee on his head. He's going to be able to receive, and it's a plus arm. He went out the outfield. He looked the part. He can play right, left.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would put him in that Riley Green mode. He could put him in center because he runs like a gazelle. It's a very underway speed. Played first base really well. I would not put it past him. We'll get a chance to see him at the All-American game. I'm going to ask him, do you want to play some third base? Go check it out and work out, because all of a sudden, if this guy can move all around the field, I think it just helps elevate where he's at. Tell me, how does that impact him as a prospect? The fact that he is 6'6", he's going to be able to catch. Well, he can also play here. He can also play there.
Yeah, the catching thing becomes very hard. We've discussed this. The what happens with these high school catchers is a longer conversation for another day. But when you decide to pour into a high school catcher, when you decide to rip the Band-Aid off and just take that plunge, everybody's going to raise their eyebrow at you, right? They're going to cringe a little bit. I've done it before. We did it with Joe Mack. We've watched the Reds do it with their big league catcher right now. Athleticism is really important, and offensive ability is really, really important. The one thing you don't want to get into, and I'm not speaking specifically about Jackson, okay? When you're high on the board, because it's so hard when they go out into pro ball, you certainly want to start with some offensive tools and some athleticism. When the player fulfills that, you just talk about Jackson's ability to move around the field. You would know that better than me. I only got him in one game and he was splitting, and you just didn't get much. The fact that he can receive, the fact that he can play other positions, the fact that he's that athletic, I saw the easy loft, raw power and BP, that's a really, really alluring thing. and keeps you in the mix when you see those kind of traits. Athleticism, strength and bat. Athleticism, strength and bat can keep you in the game for a long time.
Let's move past, because we have Fausti on here. He's similar outfielder. Where's he going to play? He can do some catching, but it's honestly a left-handed stick. We're going to see him at the All-American game, so I'm kind of save him just because we'll add some more commentary after that. I think he has a chance to be one of the best hitters in this class with that swing. But let me get to Cerna, because the big power was there a year ago. We saw it. It's crazy coil. What did you get to see? What did you like? Where would you situate him on a board? You're with whoever you're with. Where does Omar Cerna go right now if we're heading into the spring?
The first question I need answered is why he was not on Team USA. I want to know that.
Okay.
Because what he did at area codes and how he played the game, the effort level, being locked in, the raw tools were just silly. The quality of the at-bats. I don't know what held him off of Team USA. Some players don't want to go. I understand that. Some players don't want to go given the situation we have with the World Baseball Qualifier and what it was doing to East Coast Pro, and I understand that. The raw tool set out of Cerna was silly. So where he fits on a board, probably towards the back half of the first round into that comp area as your second pick, if you have comp pick. And you would take it as a second pick just because you might not want to take the high school catcher with your first pick. But in terms of what he did at area codes, he clearly announced himself as the guy in that environment.
And he's been doing it for a while. He's the return of the Joe Mack there. What about Owen Jenkins?
I'd like to know his athleticism. I'd like to know if he's played other sports. I'd like to know what he's all about. You know, he's a big physical kid. He's going to have to keep it nice and tight, maybe improve his athleticism a little bit, but he's really, really physical. He showed the ability to hit. He showed the ability to throw, hit for power. He really showed the ability to throw. So getting to know what he's all about and, you know, what his overall athleticism is going to be is probably going to dictate where he's going to ultimately land on a board. So,
youth coaches all over the country are just banging pots and pans now, excited that a former scouting director said, I'd love to know what other sports he played. So shout out to you for that. I'm the same way. Owen Jenkins, who probably the buzziest name of the summer, Kentucky kid, prep baseball American. Very excited about this guy and the amount of buzz I heard on him from June 1st through right now, whenever you're hearing this, September 1st. This kid was just being talked about, and it was impressive power display. And you had some good stories about him, his background, or more so what he was doing on the diamond between innings and behind the scenes.
Well, I could see why people were buzzing about this guy if they saw that. My first look at him ever was at the area codes, and I can see exactly why they were buzzing about him. He can throw, and like Cerna, he doesn't throw like Cerna, but he can throw. Above average arm. This guy's got serious juice. Second AB of the area codes, he hits a rocket out to left field, an absolute rocket. Evaporated the ball, to use your word. Almost knocked the wall over. Did not defend behind the plate like Cerna. And for that matter, other players that aren't quite the prospect of Jenkins. There were some really nice defensive catchers out at area codes, but didn't defend like them. I don't know if it's his experience level. I don't know if it's, I don't know exactly what it was. He didn't receive as well as some of the other guys, but it wasn't poor. I wouldn't say it was poor. And given what he was doing, how he was playing, the things that he was asking to do between innings, catch bullpens and stuff, it gave you the feeling that this is a guy that's just going to keep improving behind the plate. And make no mistake, Louisville has had a really good track record of identifying catchers. This happened when Eric Snyder was at Illinois and he was reaching up into Canada to get catchers. And the same thing has happened now when he went and got Will Smith. Then he went and got Dalton Rushing. And both of those guys, Will Smith, we know what he's doing. Surprise, surprise. Rushing's also in the Dodgers organization.
Oh, yeah.
And now we got another one coming. So I would pay attention to that. Just like we were talking about, you dropped the name before, Eisfelter, right? Really good hitter out of Tennessee. Played for the East Cobb Astros. Where's he going to school? He's going to Tennessee. What has Tennessee been pumping out? That kind of player. You got to know those kind of things if you're a team out there. When you look at catchers going to Louisville, it's not just proximity, because Eric Snyder and Dan McDonald, those guys have been able to go in different places to get catchers. I'm really interested in this Jenkins guy. He has this it's kind of a no stride swing, kind of like a Albert Pujols where it just rolls up on his front toe. And sometimes that'd be a little bit of a red flag where you're like, can he not recognize breaking balls, this and that? This guy did a pretty good job controlling his load, pretty good job identifying pitches. And I think just the sheer strength in the player and some of the things that he can prove behind the plate makes him a pretty appealing prospect. So
how vital is it for a prep catcher to have the power profile?
I like it because what it does is whether he ends up hitting a bunch of home runs or not, what it's really saying is this guy is strong. And when we start weighting things, whether you're a shortstop, whether you're a catcher, whether you're an outfielder, strength is a big deal here. Yes, we can connect it to raw power, of course. But we're talking about these. You ever go into a big league game? You sit down and you watch it, whether they're 6'2", 6'4", or they're 5'10". These dudes are strong guys. So you look at a guy like Jenkins, that's important that he is strong. So you want that. If you started to weight these things, raw power, arm strength, it might be tweaked a little bit different for each of the positions when you're just talking about the physical tools. But make no mistake, the raw power component, the strength component of athleticism weighs heavily on these young players.
How much? So let me dive in more into the tool profile of those guys, because a lot of times we lose sight, but there can be some loudness. This guy's got a cannon. And for me, I a lot of times think back to Jake Rogers. I coached at Tulane. He's now at the Tigers. His catch and throw was unreal. Now, I hadn't played in 2 years. I still had a stronger arm than Jake Rogers. But did he put the ball on the bag every single throw, and was his release as quick as possible? It's how important is the arm to this thing? Because there's been guys in the past where it's like, this guy's got a bazooka, and whether it's Gary Sanchez had a bazooka. I mean, I remember hearing the New York media, like, this guy's got a 90 arm, and you'd hear it and it was like, yeah, but he just can't catch.
Right.
How important is it that you can actually receive?
It is important.
Versus
and
throw.
We've got all these now. It is very, very important. And what we have to remember is that it's probably one of the most underdeveloped skills in baseball. It's kind of like I watch my son play youth hockey. There aren't any goalie coaches out there. It's hard to find a goalie coach. That's just what it is in hockey. So it takes a while for those goalies to develop. And that's why they don't get drafted in hockey very high. They develop later. And all of a sudden you're a superstar and you were a 3rd round pick. Happens with goalies all the time. Okay. Same thing with catchers. It's not like all these little leagues have these great catching coaches out there. It's not like the high school team has. And then you stick them out there and you ask them to receive these guys. That's why you see at these events, East Coast Pro Area, balls are flying to the backstop. I don't really roll my eyes anymore. That's just par for the course. The catchers haven't been. So how do you get comfortable that the player is going to be able to make those adjustments? Well, is he strong? Does he have strong hands? Is he a good athlete? Does he want to catch? All of those kind of things become very important. And make no mistake, that last one I said, does he want to catch? You better want to catch, because it's a selfless position.
And you talked about him earlier, but a guy who does want to catch is Trent Grindlaner, who out of Huntington Beach, committed to Mississippi State. I thought he had a really nice summer from start to finish. He was with Team USA, a kid who just seems to love baseball. And I think, like you said, as a catcher, you got to, man, to get through minor leagues, which I was always amazed playing. And I don't know if it was like this with the Marlins, but like the guys would catch and it was like, oh, they got the off day today. And the off day was like catching bullpens. Any reliever that came in, they were catching that guy. I was like, this is an off day. I think I'd rather just play the game than have to do this. Like, I mean, relievers just bouncing things at your shins for like 8 pitches before they run up to the mound anyway. But again, getting to Grindlinger, because I think you like them just like me. Yeah,
Grindlinger was one of those. Sometimes I can say this, I guess. I think I'm allowed to say this after 20 years. I just like that guy. I don't know. I like how he walks out on the field. I like how his body looks. I like the physicality of the player. There's a couple tools sprinkled in there that I like. I want to learn more about that. If you said to me, hey, DJ, here's a couple plane tickets, use them on some high school catchers, I'll bet you he'd be one of my first flights. I just want to see that guy play. And I think it was the field presence. It was what he looked like behind the plate, thinking about what big league catchers look like. Just, he had that look to him. Yes, he can throw a little bit. Yeah, it looked like he had some strength in his swing. But I need to get more things personally. I would need to get some things buttoned up to precisely put him on the board. I know this. I like the way that guy stood behind the plate. I like the way he threw, and I'd want to go see him.
And it's to help you out there.
Deep as some of the other guys.
His frame over the last year was something that he really committed to, so that was impressive too. And I'm sure the area guys down in Orange County have plenty of track record on him. But even more so, like Cash Williams, who is a big time quarterback out of Oklahoma. He's a bit older for the class, but it's some dynamic talent, really good athlete. Quinn Shambo, who's an Illinois kid who I think Quinn Shambo is one of my favorite guys of the summer. Just watching and seeing how he receives, I think he can really defend. Again, it's probably a power profile. I don't know if he's going to, the hit tool is really going to stand out, but he can defend. He can really catch and throw, and there's power there. Whether or not it's out of high school, which again, I don't know. There may have only been 1 or 2 prep high school guys to go in 2024. But that guy out of college, he was circled. I think he's Oklahoma State recruit where, hey, this is going to be a really high follow. Pass on to Dr. Seif to check out if he does get there. Luke Billings, who you got to see a two-way, who's still trying to figure out where his highest upside is. And you got to see him on the mound, got a great note, which we saw last year at the All-American game. If you want to impart anything on those guys.
I think Billings, to your point, that guy can really throw. Billings can really struggle with the bat. That's not really his strong suit. It's a little bit more of a defensive profile, but man, can he really, really throw. And to your point, the fallback there is you put him on the bump, just like we talked about Billy Carlson the other day. I don't think you're going to have to do this with Billy Carlson because he's so good defensively, but you stick Billy Carlson on the mound and you're going to get some 7s and 8s and all that kind of stuff. Billings was kind of the same thing, lesser degree, but he can really throw.
He's a winner. He gets after it. He can really compete, and he as a worker, which is what I love about him. And the important, we got 20 guys on this catcher list, which can be expanded with other guys in that top 500. But what I think is important, especially off this year's draft, right? What were we talking about with Seif for so much of the spring? The college catching class, right? That whole crop. So a lot of these guys, the Caden Bodine for next year, who was a guy that would have been on the high school list in 22. But Josh Toole, another Pennsylvania kid, committed to Coastal Carolina. Whether or not it comes out of high school, that's a guy we're definitely following into college. Peter Mershon, who I guess we could probably put Mershon, whose brother's off to a great start with the Angels right now. We could put him on a list in that corner profile because he's such a good athlete. You can probably play some outfield. There's a little more versatility to him. Stowe Rogers out of South Carolina is one who will get a ton of looks. Presley Corville was another shout out Barb High School there in Louisiana. But DJ, the high school prep, high school catching is always just such a difficult profile to look at. But then you go on to college and all of a sudden it becomes almost vital for a lot of organizations.
Yeah, and it does. And that's why you see a lot of those catchers going in the 3rd to the 5th round, 3rd to the 6th round. Drake Baldwin went to the Braves in the 3rd round a couple years ago. Wisconsin kid.
Hockey kid.
Yeah. Ends up that we really like Drake Baldwin. Ended up Missouri State. Our Missouri scouts would know him really, really well. He was a young guy, but you can't spend a lot of time with that when you're trying to put your draft board together, worrying about what they're going to become. You can only worry about what you're going to select. But certainly there are players here. I think you just brought up a good one. There are players here that you circle, and it's not like 20 of them. You can probably come up with the top catchers in the class pretty easily. You mentioned Cernan, Jackson, Greilinger, and there might be a couple others. And then it quickly drops down to this next group. And it sure would be great to draft a Ben Rortvort or Tucker, he was out of Indianapolis. What was his name? Can't recall his name, in the 5th or 6th round. But a lot of those players want to go to school and then they become Drake Baldwin, and there are a lot of catchers. God, the list goes on and on. I saw a kid from Maryland that looked really good, Dallas Brooks or something. He did a really nice job at area codes. He's a guy that can go to school and be good. And there's a number of others, but yeah, those players, Tom O'Connell, we didn't talk about him. Nice catcher. So
keep an eye on Cash Williams. I think that's a name we'll be locked in on. DJ, at some point we got to put together the all hockey team versus the all hoops team, and then maybe throw a little football action in there. We'll bring those guys. This has been awesome. Huge meaty episode. Lots to decipher. The position players have been wrapped up here. We will move on to the left-handers, the right-handers, the high school pitching that we love to talk about so much. I know Rhett the Dret will be doing tons of production on this. Might have to split it up into 3 episodes. We'll see what he does with it. But this has been awesome, DJ. Really excited to get those pitching. And honestly, I can't wait to rock this shirt down, this polo down in Miami. So until next time, we'll see you guys. This has been the War Room.